The party that told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. This was author George Orwell in the infamous book 1984, and frankly, it feels a hell of a lot like January 13th, 2026.
Welcome to Political Playlist.
All right, are we ready, guys?
Happy hour.
Happy hour.
We fucked that up so bad.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Political Playlist Happy Hour. I'm Michael Kristoff.
I'm Anna Muskie-Goldwyn with a cold.
And I'm Anthony Barquette without a cold.
I had to do a disclaimer because I know that I sound weird.
Yes, we don't have a nasally filter on here,
I'm
listener.
sorry.
This is
I can make
indeed
it-
Anna's
I'm trying
real
to
voice
speak.
at the moment.
I'm trying to speak from my diaphragm.
Yes, you really want to engage your core.
Yes.
Well, cheers, everybody. I have
Cheers.
to tell our listener that we were on a little group text thread prior to this recording, and I think we all collectively agreed that we were actually going to have real cocktails on this happy hour.
Rage.
I don't know if that's us like totally throwing in the towel on Dry January, or if like this
By the way,
is that
like you're the only
insane
one
of a
who's
news
been
week.
claiming your like damp January bullshit.
Yeah. Damp. Well, we're going
I heard
for a
someone
swim
else
now.
actually used
Yeah.
damp January the other day, and I was like, oh,
Mm.
okay, it's a thing. All right.
Yeah.
I don't know. For those of us who don't have a drinking problem, it doesn't really like need to be said.
Okay, Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah,
Well,
Anna, I would agree. I don't have a drinking problem, so that's why I don't do Dry January.
There's a great quote from John Malkovich in the movie Burn After Reading, where he's being accused of having a drinking problem by his CIA boss. And he's like, Peck, you're a Mormon. Next to you, we all have a drinking problem.
Am I
It's
the
good.
Mormon of
It's
the
good
group?
line. You're the Mormon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Definitely.
listen, guys, we have a banger of an episode because yet again, we have an insane week of news. We are talking about Dan Crenshaw, the politician on our playlist. We are going to discuss Iran and how to talk about what is very likely and apparently an ongoing revolution in the midst here. And we don't even have time to talk about the criminal investigation against the Fed chair or the New York Times interview where Donald Trump said the only thing holding him back is his own
I
morality.
can't even with that.
I mean, those are the things we had to cut
Yeah.
for the show
Yeah.
to make room for what I think is the news that is unfolding before our eyes, before our ears, on our television screens, in our conversations, all over our social media feed. And that is, of course, what is exploding out of Minneapolis, which really began 6 days ago when an unarmed woman, Renee Nicole Good, was shot and killed at close range by an ICE officer after she had allegedly drove her car into him. So right after this happened, the administration led by Vice President J.D. Vance came out and unequivocally labeled her a domestic terrorist, said that this video clearly showed that she was driving her car towards an ICE officer, and went further and heralded the ICE officer as a hero. Now, obviously, for those of us with eyes and ears who watched the video, obviously due process was not given in this instance. But furthermore, judging by the video, it does not appear as though Renee Good was, in fact, driving towards the officer, was, in fact, driving away from the officer, and did, it seems, accidentally bump into him, graze him, going 5 miles an hour as she drove away. He then fired shots into the open window, killing her. Her car drives into a telephone pole, which stops it because she's dead. And then on the video, he's overheard calling her a, quote, fucking bitch. So we're not here to talk about this video really, or what the legal diagnosis of this is. But I think where I want to begin this conversation with you guys, because it's just been the thing that is frankly eating away at me, is enough is fucking enough. Is this going to be something that starts to change the tide in this country that I no longer recognize?
I mean, I feel like we're definitely entering a phase, right? Like you have seen now in the last, what has it been, 5 days, right? Like 6 days, you've seen increasing number of ICE agents in Minneapolis specifically. Obviously, what the Trump administration is doing is they're saying, oh, there's protests, which means there's unrest, which means we have to send more ICE agents, which to me is just like an insane calculation. But they are touting that they're undergoing like the largest immigration enforcement operation or whatever that they've undergone. And I think that where the story really lies now is how much of what is happening in this one city is going to captivate public attention. And I think, unfortunately, the only way that it will turn the tide or like hit a tipping point is if enough people in office on the Republican side feel that their reelection will be at stake because of it. Because I think that that is, unfortunately, the only thing that can rein any of this in. And by the way, as I say that, I'm like, that's actually not true because these are federal agents under the behest of the administration. Congress actually has nothing to do with this and they accept giving the money, which they already did. So I do think that like we may start to see some Republican politicians have different language about what is going on. I don't know if that will be enough to like turn the tides. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but I just remembered what Tucker Carlson said. I don't know if you guys saw that he basically was like, this was murder. And I do wonder if there's now also going to be on the flip side of like elected politicians, is there going to be a thing within like the MAGA movement that potentially festers from this? But I don't really think that that's the case.
Anthony, are you surprised at how immediately partisan this shooting has become, really across the board, from top officials like Donald Trump, JD Vance, Kristi Noem, all the way down to like the Fox News fill-in guy? Just save Tucker Carlson aside for a sec, because I think it's actually remarkable that he is speaking his mind here, and I'm here for it, even though I'm not a fan. But are you surprised at the just across the board falling in line response to this video?
I mean, I'm not, only because all of that leadership got out in front of it and said that. Like, I was like, frankly shocked when Kristi Noem, I'm sorry, I'm laughing saying this, but like the amount of times that she lies has to like weigh on her at some point.
Insane.
You know, where
I think she's really dumb and she just doesn't like it doesn't.
Yeah. And I was like, man, she must be taking like a Xanax before every news and
she's on like constant beta blockers for sure.
Yeah, because she's just like, yeah, you know, she's a domestic terrorist, and you're like, oh yeah, that white lady who had her wheels turned the opposite direction,
right? And with like stuffed animals in the front seat.
Do you tell your agents the first thing to do is shoot, then ask questions, or what's the protocol? Because every protocol I looked in for any sort of officer of the law, there's about 7 or 8 other things you're supposed to do before you use your weapon.
Right.
So,
but it's not surprising.
The thing that I am very surprised at, and I don't know if this is a reflection of the just escalating moment that we are in as a country, or whether people's true colors are really shining, or a combination of both. And that is, I am so stunned, and I'm on text threads, I'm on group chats with other Republicans who are all decent-minded policy folks who just might have a disagreement with Democrats. But it's now gotten to the point where people on text threads are actively calling for ICE agents to mow down and kill protesters. Now, we could say this is just hyperbole and fun rhetoric on a text thread. Those wouldn't be my words I'd use, but let's run with that for a sec. And so what I am seeing from people is this cheering and this celebrating and this out of control, euphoric, hyped up, amped up Pete Hegseth praise for the killing of unarmed and the beating up of unarmed civilians to teach them a lesson. And all you have to do, this isn't a fringe cause anymore. This isn't just like a small group of bad actors. We are seeing video after video out this week of ICE agents going up to protesters, to people just standing there, filming, calmly exercising their First Amendment rights, and saying to them point blankly, have you not learned your lesson?
And by the way, grabbing their phones, pushing them over. I mean, I was just watching a video.
Throwing the first punch. These guys are throwing the first punch. That is not law enforcement.
Let me get on my feminist high horse for a second. And obviously there are people like Kristi Noem that completely disapprove what I'm about to say. But I do feel like what is happening is there is this like insane sort of like fire building among these small men who have found like an occupation where they can make money and just like be fucking assholes. And that you watch some of these videos of ICE agents saying that shit of like, didn't you learn anything, or like, get your phone out of my face or whatever. And it's like, really? Like, you can't just look, I disagree with everything you're doing, but you can't just go do the thing you're supposed to do. You have to go and get in the faces of protesters who are there 100% legally. And you are going to put your hands on people who have not put their hands on you. You are going to enter homes without a warrant. I don't know if you guys saw that video where they literally pushed their way into a home in Minneapolis without a warrant. And it's just like the small dick, stupid man, like, I don't have a purpose, but now I've finally found this thing that's gonna like give me some sense of like macho-ness and masculinity. And it's just so blatantly obvious to me. And I think that vibe is the vibe that I have always found so repulsive about what Trump has tried to drum up in America, because it's not just men, it's also women in service of that hypermasculinity, like Kristi Noem, who, by the way, has like injected herself to beyond belief so that she can look like whatever she thinks men want a woman like her to look like. And she's become anorexic so that she can be some sort of like mantle of like aestheticism that obviously is not correct. And I feel like what we are witnessing with ICE is like the pinnacle of that like dumb male, just like so like panties in a bunch. I don't have any other purpose in life except to harass and hurt people. And now there's a permission structure for these people to do that. And I think that it's so scary because, to your point, Michael, it then pulls on like something that in just normal people, because I'm going to bet that none of the people on those text chains doing that are women. And
no,
pulls,
they're all men.
I think
none of them have girlfriends.
It pulls in on something in mostly men, I think also in women who have insecurities of their own, to say like, I'm going to support this like quote strong power structure. And I'm going to like, yeah, fuck them. Like, it gives an outlet for anger. And it goes back to what we talked about last week with anger and violence kind of being the only answer now. And it's just so clear to me when I watch these videos of ICE agents that I'm like, you have no fucking confidence in yourself. And because of that, you need to walk around with a gun and hurt people who are just trying to do the right thing.
I want to take that one step further, and I want to say they also have no training. And here's a fun fact.
I mean,
so
for
today,
sure. For sure.
On CNBC, let me give you some facts here. Senator Mark Warner, who is one of the high-ranking Senate Democrats, long tenure. He was on CNBC today, and he said ICE used to go through 5 to 6 months of rigorous training. Now, do you want to know?
1 month.
47 days.
Wow.
Now, how do you think they arrived at that 47 number?
Oh my God.
Because Donald Trump is the 47th president. So I would love for some listener, some Republican, anybody out there to explain to me the fucking rationale behind this decision. This is what is leading our country, and it is a goddamn fucking disgrace. I mean, this is unconscionable. This is unconscionable. It's likely unconstitutional. And I really, really hope that every single one of these motherfuckers is held accountable to the fullest extent of the law, because this isn't American. This isn't what people who voted for Donald Trump voted for. This isn't what he ran on. This is Project 2026, and this is Stephen Miller exercising a fascist cleanse. And that's exactly what it is. When you look at the historical definition of fascism, it is ethnically cleansing a country through political movement. That is exactly what is happening. And this is exactly what is not bringing our country together, but absolutely driving the sharpest wedge between our people. And I don't know, to go back to my first question, I'm really terrified that this isn't going to change anything, what we're seeing in Minneapolis right now.
So I would say maybe one thing I do disagree with you on, Michael, is I don't want the Democrats to win in the midterms and start prosecuting everyone, because they're going to do exactly what they did before, and it's not going to go over well. These people are going to have very bad things happen to them because they're doing bad things. They're dragging people out of cars. They're dragging people out of homes. They're separating these families. They're taking a generation of people right now, and these people are going to come back and do something. And by the way, Secretary Noem's not going to have security all of her life, because she's going to be a no one when she's out. The only person who's going to be protected during this entire thing is Trump and parts of his family. But people are going to go after these people later because of how they were treated. And
but see, I don't think that's the right answer. I disagree with you that I think
Michael,
every single one of these people should be prosecuted.
If we go through this whole thing again, where all the Democrats do is prosecute, and some of them don't, because, by the way, there's so many Republican judges in now, we will waste time.
But time for what? See,
Well,
this is what I'm struggling with, because
you're falling into their trap. You're falling into their trap, dude.
So these people, I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is, if a crime is committed and the prosecution of said crime has the appearance of politicization, then we shouldn't follow the law and prosecute that crime?
May I build a bridge?
Sure, fine.
Well,
Love a bridge.
I mean, I agree with both of you, because I think, like, Michael,
I'm going to blow this bridge up. Go ahead.
Should I even try?
Try.
Okay.
It's
No,
nice
build
that
a bridge.
you're in the middle of us right now too, on the screen.
It's good.
Oh, that's
I don't
only
know.
on your screen. On my
No, that's
screen,
only
Michael's in the
mine.
middle. No, all I was gonna say is, like, I think that, Michael, what you're saying is, like, the morally correct answer, and I think that, of course, people should be held responsible. But what I agree with what Anthony is saying is that we are living in a political climate where I do think that the majority of Americans, who, to your point last week, Michael, are independents, are people somewhere in the middle. There's no taste for the party comes in, prosecutes the enemies, next party comes in, prosecutes the people before them. And this has nothing to do with, like, who's actually done something right and wrong, because that's where I agree with you, Michael, is, like, this to me is actually beyond, like, corruption. This to me is something that is just, like, so incredibly dangerous. But I think that where I understand where Anthony's coming from is that if and when Democrats gain power again, I think that we are in a world where, like, every 2 years there's shifts in power. And so when he says, like, running out of time, it's like you really have a very small amount of time where you can dedicate your resources, your media hits, your anything. And I feel like in order for the left to get some semblance of, like, grasp back on the political system, I do think that these kinds of prosecutions, maybe they happen in the background, but I don't think they should be the position of the Democratic Party coming in 2026 in Congress, if it's that, or in 2028 in the White House, if it's that. That's my bridge. Blow it up. Go ahead.
I think that's a nice bridge, and we're gonna segue to the politician on our playlist in a moment.
I'll walk across it.
I want to use some statistics. I want to use some statistics because I think that a lot of things that we are seeing in this administration right now are being done under false pretext. And they are creating a false narrative in order to enact what is a deeper, more malicious agenda. And so all of the things that we're seeing right now, right? By the way, ICE is not who is sent in to quell protesters. That is the job of local law enforcement. So again, more lies to justify actions that are geared towards terrorizing our citizens. But here are the ICE stats at the moment. 48,377 out of the 65,735 currently held in ICE detention have no criminal records or convictions as of December of 2025. And of those 30% remaining, many are non-violent offenders with minor offenses like a speeding ticket, and only 5% of ICE detainees and deportees have violent criminal convictions. So
according to who?
These stats are according to the Cato Institute, which is a widely respected libertarian think tank. And these, and by the way, Trump has fired the people who gather the numbers for the government. So we're now relying on these independent institutions. And my point is this. We are seeing a government right now do things that is at the complete disregard of the greater good and at the complete disregard of what the citizens and people have asked for, have voted for, and the gaslighting that is going on under the false pretext of, oh my God, we're solving immigration, we're getting rid of illegal aliens and criminals. Look at all these violent people. The statistics and the data don't support that. And, we're going to get into Venezuela and we're going to get into Iran in a bit here. But the fact of the matter is that this is the tried and true playbook that they're now using on everything. They're using this false pretext that sounds great. Like, yeah, let's get rid of the violent, illegal criminals in this country. Absolutely. I don't think you could find an American who's not for that. But this mass ICE operation that is going into our cities and our towns, ICE officers at intersections in Chicago today, pepper spraying into open windows of cars driving by. This is not going after violent, criminal, illegal aliens.
100%. And all I can say to kind of put a button on that is I agree with what you said before. I don't think that what's happening in Minneapolis itself is going to change anything. However, we are in an election year. And I do think that the compounding effect of all of these things that have now been happening for almost a year are going to permeate people's decision-making in the midterms. And I think that that is where, not for Trump, because again, as we said before, he is only guided by his own morality, of which we know there is none, but for other politicians and other people in leadership positions, that I think is what will potentially turn the tides and tamp down some of the policies. So I guess the only message is like, you can't stop. You can't stop recording. You can't stop protesting. You can't stop exposing the truth. You can't stop fighting for this. You can't stop being angry, because I think the more that this issue continues to permeate, the more it will be in public consciousness when the time comes to vote.
I mean, Anthony, maybe that is the way you hold these people accountable, is that you
vote them out.
You show the truth, you photograph, you document the truth, and then you use that truth at the ballot box.
Look, history will not be kind to these people. Let's just say that as well.
I would agree with both of those statements. So,
well, shall we travel to Latin America, boys?
Viva Venezuela.
So the politician on our playlist this week is none other than Texas's Republican Representative Dan Crenshaw.
DC in the house.
One of the more notable, known young politicians in Congress right now. And, Crenshaw is an interesting figure. He's a former Navy SEAL. He went to the Harvard Kennedy School. He's very outspoken. He has a podcast. He is really, as we've discussed before, I think building a brand of his own that is both in support of Trump, but also kind of his own version of it, because I think that he has higher aspirations than a seat in Congress. So
kind of known for his eye patch, right?
kind of known for
Yeah.
his eye patch. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Hottest accessory 2026. So the reason I wanted to talk about Dan Crenshaw is that what is going on in Venezuela, I think, is really related to his story. And I think his perspective is an interesting one, because Dan actually grew up in Ecuador and Colombia because his parents worked in the oil and gas industry. And he had come back to the United States, but his parents eventually actually moved to Venezuela in the early 2000s. So he sort of, through them, had witness to a thriving Venezuela, and then they left, but then a Venezuela under the Maduro regime that sort of declined very slowly, but to what we've seen it is in now. And so it goes without saying that Dan was in support of Maduro's capture, and he has echoed the administration in saying that it was a law enforcement act and did not pertain to any act of war, which would have needed congressional approval. And something that I thought was really interesting that he said that I wanted to bring up is he feels that this shouldn't be a partisan issue, because both Republicans and Democrats have agreed for years that Maduro was not the legitimately elected president and needed to be removed. And in fact, and I fact-checked this, Biden, before he left office, issued a $25 million reward for information that would lead to Maduro's arrest and conviction. And what he has said is he thinks it's clear that the U.S. can accomplish its objectives in Venezuela without deploying soldiers. However, the White House, as we know, has said that they are not afraid to send troops into into Venezuela from the U.S. And that, of course, would need to be approved by Congress. So I think Crenshaw seems to think that what's going on is more about strategy and should be about maybe both sides coming together to see this common interest, whereas maybe the White House is still thinking a little bit more in terms of like intervention. So specifically about this idea of it being like a nonpartisan issue, what do you guys think of Crenshaw's take here?
I have a couple of thoughts, and I want to say I really like Dan Crenshaw, and I really want to have him on this show. And I'm not saying I like him because I want to have him on the show. I want to have him on the show because I like him. And I don't always agree with him. And I have to say, like, and I'm curious what you guys think of this. I'm really torn on this Venezuela thing, because on the one hand, I absolutely agree with him. Maduro is a bad actor who I am thrilled to see out of power. And I'm thrilled to see him held accountable in U.S. courts and laws. At the same time, I think that Pete Hegseth is one of the most unqualified individuals to ever serve as our Secretary of Defense. And I think that Marco Rubio has about as much moral fortitude as a weather vane in the sitting on a barn in a windstorm.
And Marco Rubio has a lot of personal,
and he has a lot of
conflict
personal animosity
within this
towards Cuba,
that is
as it
driving
relates
his
to
decisions.
where Cuba gets a lot of their resources, i.e. Venezuela. So I don't like the idea that a very, very brash and reckless administration with no clear plan has gone into a sovereign country, has kidnapped the president of a sovereign country, and using military force. Don't say this was a law enforcement exercise when you have 150 military aircraft launching attacks on a city.
Come on, that's just your average drugstore.
Oh yeah, the FBI, they were FBI fighter jets. Oh right, okay, yeah. So, but my issue here is that there is no plan, there is no strategy, and again, what we were talking about earlier about this false pretext is that we're going after Maduro, this bad drug dealer president, and yet now we're seemingly running the country, and we're sitting down with all of the oil executives divvying up the pie to see who's going to open up new refineries in this country and get rich. And so like I respect Dan's approach and his experience in the matter of deposing brutal, terrible dictators. However, you cannot just you cannot disregard what is clearly the underlying facts of this thing playing out in real time before all of our eyes at the expense of the American people and our pocketbooks. Like you can't.
I also just didn't realize that's our job right now is to go into these countries and dispose of these leaders since they're bad.
Well,
right?
it doesn't feel like
And
America first.
I mean, hey, like
Right.
Venezuela, I get the oil play, right? But there's a laundry list of other countries that have dictators who are just as bad as Maduro as well. But what really boggles my mind is this really the top agenda stuff we should be doing?
Right. It's
No.
actually kind of
Here's
surprising.
what
when you
I
think
would have
about it.
done.
It's
If
incredibly
I was president,
I love
here's what I
this
would have
game.
done. I would have sent Steve Witkoff, my little fucking minion negotiator, in there, and I would have had the deal offered to Maduro, which was the following: step down, you'll live out your life in comfort in Venezuela. We're going to give your country a bailout like we did with Brazil and to the however many billion, or Argentina, excuse me.
Yeah.
Same. And we're going to give you a bailout. We're going to resurrect your oil business, which you, over the last 10 years of your leadership, or 13 years of your leadership, absolutely drove into the ground. We're going to open up your oil business. We're going to make your country rich and stable again. And what you have to do is a few things. You step down, you give over the drug dealers, and we put in a new person in place. And here's the deal that we're doing. And that is that.
I think that was definitely offered, to be honest.
I think that, yeah. I mean,
and it
this
sounded like there were various offers made.
Can I just play devil's advocate / Republican for a second?
Ooh,
like,
love that.
I guess that what I wonder is, first of all, I agree there seems to be no plan, and there should be a plan.
I would agree with that too.
Seems to be no plan. Well, I'm sorry.
Don't give Michael a heart attack, Hannah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Guys, I am out of booze.
Okay.
You know what? Here's what we're gonna do.
Oh my God.
He's already 50
I'm gonna
years
go
old.
grab this giant
Wow.
bottle of Jack Daniels that is under my desk right now. This is not a
What are you,
prop. There's a
Kesha?
bar next to my desk. And I'm gonna just pour this fucking Jack Daniels.
So
and you just keep talking. And when things
Okay.
level out, I'm gonna stop.
Little
Okay.
worried that's under your desk, but okay.
Yeah. Okay, Michael, stop pouring. All right. What I was going to
Good
say
Lord.
is, okay, let me rephrase. There is no plan. Oh my God, he's taking sway. Oh, this is making
There's
me
no
like,
plan, people.
This is making me gag.
Okay,
Also
talk,
Jack
Hannah.
If you
Daniels.
guys are listening to our podcast and you're not watching it on video, you really should start watching it on video, because what's happening
Hello,
right now
sponsorship.
is insane.
The only thing missing is my college sweater.
Okay, relax. So, as I was saying, there is no plan, which is concerning. The thing that I kind of keep questioning is, I do definitely think that what you just said, Michael, that had to at some point have been on the table, because we know that this is something that Trump has been talking about for a long
I
time.
hope.
Okay. Just mute yourself for a second. So, I guess that what I'm wondering is, when excuse me. So to go
mute
back
yourself for a second.
Go back to Crenshaw. We're a disaster right now. To go back to Crenshaw for a second, if I'm looking at this through his eyes, I feel like there is a version of this where people like Crenshaw, people like Rubio, people who have been invested in what is happening in Latin America for a very long time, that they see Venezuela as obviously this sort of linchpin thing in our America's area of the world. And where I maybe am just okay, is there validity to this? Is having some sort of creating this oil industry there that allows for American power and allows for American influence. And I think that what Crenshaw is really saying, and I think he has a little bit less emotion about it than Rubio, is it's not really about Cuba. It's about Iran and Russia and China, which all were trading partners with Venezuela, which all sort of were both being propped up and propping up Venezuela. And so if we take the partisanship out of it, we've talked a lot about the need for putting a hammer down on Russia, the need for staying competitive with China, who, by the way, are the ones that are controlling the flow of fentanyl, because that's where it is originally made. And so is there some validity to Venezuela under U.S. control means that these quote unquote adversary countries are weakened in a way that actually is good for our national security. Okay, my Republican hat is off. Go ahead.
I love that hat on you, by the way. Love it.
No, but that I mean I think that's so true, and that's where I really do agree with Crenshaw on this point. I don't think China is gonna just give up some
No,
their
of
stuff
course
there,
not. Of course not.
right? Like they've been there way longer and done way more. So I'd be surprised. I mean, maybe that's where like Trump is like, you know what, China just take Taiwan and we'll take Venezuela.
Well, that I think that is actually the
Well,
like to me what's more dangerous.
That's the bigger conversation.
Yeah, like
here.
I think
Yeah.
that like maybe where I'm trying to be a little bit more centrist about it is like I do actually understand the validity of wanting to take some control in Venezuela and shape that country in a way. Not that maybe I personally agree with it, but I understand that. But I think that where people like Crenshaw miss the mark is the signal that this sends. And it's something we talked about last week, so we don't need to belabor it. But like, I think those are the two things that are at conflict. And it's kind of what you said earlier, Michael. It's like Maduro was bad. It's good he's not there anymore. If you talk to any Venezuelan American, Republican, Democrat, or somewhere in between, they are happy that he is gone. But the implications of him being gone can have a ripple effect. And I think that Democrats get a little bit ahead of themselves sometimes because it becomes boy who cried wolf, where it's like, though it's all going to be horrible. It's like, well, let's see what happens, right? Like, is this going to trigger something where suddenly China is reinforcing its military on Taiwan in a way that we haven't seen before? Or is this something we're going to see that there's more threat to Zelensky than there was before because Russia's like, oh, we can just go in and like take a president? Well, why don't we just do that?
I mean, I think the answer to those two things is yes. The
is
question
that happening?
is, well, first of all, Ukraine is under siege. Like it hasn't been in the last year by Russia. There has been an increase in bombardments. We are no closer to a deal that Agent Orange said he would do on day one. China has been ramping up maneuvers in the South China Sea. So they're actively planning this. The question is, what are people like Dan Crenshaw going to say when China invades Taiwan? What is Dan Crenshaw saying right now with respect to the deal that is trying to be brokered between Ukraine and Russia? Are they saying what looks to be happening right now is we're dividing up the world in three parts. We're dividing up the U.S., takes South America, Russia moves into Eastern Europe and takes that, and China goes south and takes the South China Sea. So what does Dan Crenshaw think about Russia increasing their territory hold on Eastern Europe? What does he think about China going into Taiwan? Because it's easy to say, oh, yeah, Maduro's a bad guy. But how about these other things?
Well, when we get him on the pod, we can ask him.
I
But
can't wait.
Speaking of foreign policy, we've got a pretty big foreign policy story unfolding.
Yes. Wow.
Deep breaths. Deep breaths.
Wow. So
take it away, Tony.
So how to talk about section. Iran.
You were going to say how to talk about sex.
I was just
how to talk about
Iran. So as many of you know and probably seen on social media, Iran is in the middle of a major internal crisis right now. Let's not forget, this is a population of 90 million people, the country does.
Wow.
So right now,
which is huge.
It's huge. Yeah,
I don't think of it as that big. That is huge.
Iran is a very big country.
It's a third of the U.S. So
who knew?
This is being driven mainly by economic collapse through nationwide protests. Their currency has been devalued. There's terrible inflation. There's obviously a longstanding grievance with repression and corruption in the country. And the government is obviously responding with a severe crackdown. And this is creating just this like immense and tense standoff with the U.S. and Israel being under heavy scrutiny related to the whole their nuclear program. So do you guys know when this started? Because I just feel like it's really been in the news today, but do you know when it actually started?
I mean, I
feel
feel
like
I've
when
been
they
hearing about it for a week, but
arrested,
maybe.
when they arrested and that woman, that young girl died in custody.
Well, that was
It
years
feels
ago.
like that. Well, I know, but I feel like that's when this whole thing really erupted.
So it started on December 28th. And basically there were like shoe keepers who took to the streets of Tehran.
Michael, I haven't been revolting for 2 years straight. That would be
No,
why.
but it's been
well,
boiling.
actually,
It's been
technically you
boiling.
have. But they were expressing anger related to the sharp fall in Iranian currency against the US dollar. And this started creating this just like widespread unrest throughout the whole country. Triggered by the currency collapse, triggered by the high inflation and cost of living, triggered by deep anger and the corruption and repression. So what many, outlets are characterizing this is one of the most serious challenge to the regimes since prior waves, and we've seen these waves happen in 2009, 2019, 2022. They have protests confirmed in 187 cities and towns, and in all of 31 of Iran's provinces since this started. I mean, let that
It's huge.
sink
It's
in,
huge.
right?
Yeah.
And
Again, I don't think of Iran as that big. This is a
I
massive
know.
Okay,
country.
get over it,
Wow.
Jack Daniels.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Who knew it was so large?
So, like, I've already stressed, though, I don't need to really get into the like economic part. We already know the high inflation is happening there, but like what is happening? So there's reports of mass arrests over like 10 to 20,000.
Yeah.
There's been reports of at a minimum 2,000 deaths. Some are saying over 10,000.
By the way,
Many
executions.
at the hands of
like
the regime.
shooting protesters.
And you hear my numbers have quite a wide disparity. The issue is because there's major restrictions on information flow. It's very hard to get truthful information out of Iran since so much of the media is restricted in these areas.
And they shut off the internet, right?
They've shut off the internet. Major international news is not allowed in Iran. So I want you to also keep this as an important thing. So the fall of the Shah of Iran was in the 70s. So many of these protesters in the streets are young people who really never knew what the world was like under the former Shah of Iran. It's only a thing that they've heard of.
Which,
right?
can I just qualify that for a second? The Iran, but in that time, was much more free, was much more culturally diverse, was much more artistic, it was like a very thriving place. And then it basically became under religious rule and has been so ever since.
Yes.
Loved
I'm just
the
saying
movie
like
Argo.
I'm just saying a lot of them never experienced it.
Yeah.
Like,
I just wanted to.
Like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So what's the U.S. doing here? Trump has said help is on the way. Who knows what that will be? He's also imposed a 25% tariff on imports from countries that trade with Iran. That's also hitting what you just talked about with Crenshaw, right? That's going to be hitting China, India, Russia. And then the government has come out, the Iranian government has come out saying that they are ready to engage in military action, but they have started communications with the Trump administration and are already negotiating.
But then at the same time, didn't Trump say he's not talking to any Iranian officials? He tweeted that.
He's not, but his what I forget how Michael had to describe him.
His little man.
I called him his little bitch minion taskmaster, Steve Witkoff. And fun fact, and I know they're not listening, I actually played golf with the guy who's dating Steve Witkoff's ex-wife and lives in his home in Southampton, Long Island. Anyway, I digress.
Get him on the pod.
Nice guy. Nice guy.
On the pod.
Yeah.
That house is about to be.
Yeah,
that house is about to be raided.
But here's what I think is interesting, right? So what we're seeing here is a few things that I think kind of really relate to both the Venezuela thing and also all of the ICE stuff that we're seeing, right? So we're seeing an administration that is coming out fervently in support and saying protect these protesters while they're sending in their own sort of hacky
The hypocrisy is like
Gestapo,
laughable.
right, to Minneapolis, right, because of the soccer moms in their minivans. And we're seeing Trump has denied talking with this crown prince who is the son of the Shah, and his name is Reza Pahlavi. I believe I'm saying that right. And so this is the crown prince who has grown up here. He came here. He lives in Maryland. He's like 60 right now.
65.
And, you know, he has been since the fall in 79. He's been, and his father died in 1980. So he's been the heir apparent, and he has claimed that he's the rightful person in this place, or on the throne of Iran. And so what I think is really interesting here is that once again, Trump has deployed Steve Witkoff. I actually have a friend who is in Miami currently who photographed this crown prince at breakfast yesterday morning, and there were like 100 security detail around this dude. And he was like,
Next stop,
why are you in
Mar-a-Lago?
Florida? Sounds like you're meeting at Mar-a-Lago, which is exactly what he was doing. And so, you know, I think, again, here's the U.S. injecting themselves in foreign policy that politically goes in direct conflict with the notion of America first. And I'm curious for you guys, what do you think are going to be the political ramifications of this? You know, what do supporters of the president's, we've talked about the midterms coming up. We've talked about the president realizing that politics is on the ballot, right? He called Elizabeth Warren yesterday to talk about affordability because now he's fucking nervous about losing the midterms. So like interjecting himself, he's talked about military action potentially in Iran. What does this mean for him?
Well, sorry, Anna, maybe just before you jump in.
No, go ahead.
I think just an interesting connection here with Venezuela once again as well is, you know, you have Machado, right, who he doesn't believe is the right, you know, leader for the country, just as much as Pahlavi, if that's how his name is pronounced.
I think it's Pahlavi.
Reza Pahlavi, who is the son of the former emir. He's not the right person to come in and take over leadership. So you have Venezuela, that's a population of 30 plus million. And you have this place, which is a population of 90 plus million. And maybe the U.S. is going to help, you know, in both of these
select
places.
the leaders.
Yeah.
Well, that's also what's so interesting about it is like these places have sort of clear like opposition. I mean, I wouldn't call the Crown Prince of Iran an opposition force necessarily. He's more kind of like a person in waiting in a way. But I think that
hey guys, don't forget about me.
Yes, exactly.
Was it a Iranian accent? Or was
what was that?
That was like a tiny Tim from.
I'm pretty sure if he like has lived here for a really long time, he probably has an American accent.
You'd be surprised, actually. He has a very thick accent.
Okay. So, but my point is that like, I think that what you're saying, Anthony, is so interesting because we're going into these massively populated countries with massive resources and massive political problems to overturn. And in some respect, those countries, the people of those countries have actually spoken, right? They have said, this is what we want, this is what we don't want. In Venezuela, the example is they elected Machado, right? And then she was exiled, and then they elected the guy that she kind of, you know, handed the mantle to. But now Trump is saying neither of them are going to be the leader. And similarly in Iran, it's like, okay, well, if there was this, you know, functioning country in the 70s, like who's to say that it can't be that again? But obviously Trump is going to want to intervene. And I think this all goes back to my thesis of power and fragile masculinity and the sort of dereliction of women and how Trump's whole thing is he wants to build this like strong sort of appearance on the world stage. It's why he's talking about Greenland, which is fucking ridiculous. We don't even need to talk about it because it's so ridiculous.
We didn't even get to that.
Thankfully, rounding error, population of 33,000. So
okay, yeah. Well, speaking of women, let me just say here that Representative Yasmin Ansari, who we've spoken with, a congresswoman
Iranian American
from Arizona, who's the first Iranian American Democrat elected to Congress.
First
She-
Iranian ever, right? I think elected to Congress.
I just know she's the first Democrat. I don't know if there was a Republican, but let's just call her the first.
He's on the fact
Yeah.
check. Continue, Michael.
I mean, she's the first female. So
sure. Go ahead.
you know, I thought she has been an interesting voice in this, and a couple of things she was calling for today were for the U.S. to restore internet access to the Iranian people, which I think is, you know, Elon Musk, hello Starlink,
You're right.
easy to fucking do, you piece of shit. And secondly, I thought, which was very interesting, is she was not at all coming out in support of this crown prince, Reza Pahlavi. God, I hope I'm saying the name right. And she was saying, no, if we're going to go in there and support the revolutionaries, let's actually call for a free and fair election. Let's let the people of Iran decide who they want to be led by. They don't want this Islamic regime of the Khomeini, and they maybe don't want the crown
throne.
prince. Let's let the people decide.
Well,
So I thought
and
that was
then it becomes a question. I mean, I think that she's an important voice and people should be following her on this, because I do think that as a young Iranian American, she has her finger on the pulse of what these protesters, many of them who are young in Iran, are thinking and feeling and striving for. I guess like my question to that is like, okay, what does a free and fair election in Iran look like? And how is that accomplished without the US like going and invading Iran and kind of taking over? Because I think that is what is scary in both Venezuela and Iran, is it's like, okay, well, we have these sort of like, you know, ideas of how these countries should be different, but are we going to put our military in there to accomplish whatever those goals are? And Crenshaw is saying no in Venezuela. I think that I hope no in Iran, because that I think would have even larger implications. But I think that's where it gets a little dicey. It's like, what do those free and fair countries look like if without military intervention, which I think most people do not want.
Which is a great point, Anna, because I don't know if you saw the news today, but they said that there were these pro-Iranian government protests as well.
I did see that.
In favor of them. You know, so who knows if that's real or not. But what people really forget is, this sounds great when you're talking about it, but to implement it, and let's face it, there's a laundry list of people who are interested in taking that position as well.
Right.
Not handing it over to the Americans.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and how deep does that go? Maybe I followed that Ayatollah, but I was never in fully favor of him. I think it could be run better, but I'm still a corrupt human being.
I think I will say the one thing I'll give the administration credit on in this moment in Iran is that they have really forcefully come out today and said that if you, Iranian regime, if you are executing people, if you are executing protesters, you know, there's this horrific story about this 26-year-old who's like set to be hung in Iran. It's pretty wild. Like, he was a peaceful protester. He was arrested. He's going to be hung tomorrow. Like, the State Department said that Iran has confirmed they're like doing these public hangings tomorrow.
Wow.
That it's really intense, grim shit. And the administration, to Trump and his fellow acolytes' credit, have said, if you go through with these executions, we are bringing military force on you. We're bringing sanctions on you. This will not end well for you. And I think that, you know, not that I'm for military intervention in Iran, but I do think that that kind of blustery talk is potentially a good thing to prevent these civilians of Iran from facing these kinds of horrific repercussions from this regime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, should we talk about some good news before we wrap up?
Oh, God. Like, I still have a lot of Jack Daniels left.
I mean, it's
or
good
other
news.
Good
It's
news?
good news with an asterisk, so don't worry, you can still drink
Okay.
after it.
Okay.
But so as we have spoken about at the beginning of this year, subsidies for many Affordable Care Act plans ended under the big, beautiful bill that the Republicans passed, and many people either had their insurance premiums skyrocket or unfortunately have decided to opt out of having health insurance, which is kind of an unimaginable thing to have to be dealing with for a lot of people. I actually heard a crazy story on the radio today of a guy who's like in his 40s. He's gay. He lives with his best friend who's a woman. They've they've just been friends forever. He has an autoimmune disease and he had a plan through the ACA marketplace that was subsidized. And his friend basically was like, we should just get married so you can be on my health insurance. So they both have like forfeited the possibility of marriage to other people so that he can get health insurance for his autoimmune disease.
Wow.
But there is a glimmer of hope for some of these people.
Also, by the way, that's so cool and like amazing.
So crazy. Yeah, but also terrifying and sad.
But terrifying, yeah.
And so, but the news is that the House passed a 3-year extension of ACA subsidies with 17 Republicans joining Democrats. And I think people have to recognize that 17 Republicans in this day and age for a partisan issue like healthcare is a pretty big fucking deal for those people to be bucking party leadership. Initially, they thought it was just going to be 9 Republicans, and then more ended up joining in the final vote. And this bill as it's written is expected to die in the Senate, but I don't think people should view that as a loss, because in the Senate, what it's doing now is it's putting a ton of pressure on the Senate to come up with a bipartisan agreement to sort of in a combination extend the subsidies and then have sort of Republican wishes in there, which is essentially like reform the subsidies and make some changes potentially to the way that these work. So I think that the House passing this, although this bill itself will not become law, is a really important stepping stone to starting to have bipartisan conversations about healthcare in the Senate. And the Senate is much more functional when it comes to bipartisanship because of these 6-year election cycles. So I think that you're going to see hopefully something come out of here that can be a little bit more withstanding of the partisan divide, and in the repercussions of that are that Americans get to hopefully keep their healthcare and stay insured. And the reason I wanted to call this out is because our girl, Lauren Underwood, Democratic representative from Illinois, suburbs of Chicago, she was at the center of this. She introduced the legislation. She is like the boss bitch when it comes to healthcare, and she recorded the cutest video, like genuinely so stoked that this had passed. And it's just like great to see someone who I think flies under the radar, but especially like on an issue they care about, like healthcare, has been beating the drum and got this monumental thing passed. And I will leave us with a quote from her video where she said, "The time is always right to do the right thing."
Hell yeah.
Cheers. Oh my God, you drank a lot.
No, not really. I have a lot left and I'm not drinking this. I'm pouring it back in the bottle.
Wow, Anthony is just chugging.
Chug a lug.
Good night.